Hi there, Tony Bleasdale here, the Mayor of Blacktown City. Let me say, I'm on Darug country today and acknowledge and pay respects to elders past, present, and of course emerging. I thank the Darug people for their custodianship of this land. This is and always has been Darug land. Today is National Sorry Day. National Sorry Day takes place on May the 26th each year. The day remembers and of course commemorates the mistreatment of our Aboriginal children who were forcibly removed from their families by the Australian government at that time. The aim was to turn them into white Australians. Many children were removed to the Blacktown Native Institute in the 1820s. It's among the first known sites where Aboriginal children were removed from their families and institutionalized. Located in Plumpton, the sound of mournful singing could be heard each evening from those children. The mothers camped along the nearby creek, sang lullabies to their children in the nearby institute itself. The lullabies were sung to reassure the children. I cannot imagine the level of grief those mothers experienced. Thank goodness this shameful practice was stopped. Over time, thousands of children were removed from their loving families. The children and families of the stolen generation suffered enormous psychological and cultural damage. The effects live on today. On May the 26th, 1997, the Bringing Them Home report was tabled in federal parliament. Since then, we have remembered them on this date each year. In 2008, then Prime Minister Kevin Rudd issued an apology to the stolen generation on behalf of the Australian people. The apology was long overdue and supported by us all. I too was distressed by the removal of children from their families. I too am deeply sorry that these actions occurred and had such a terrible impact. On Sorry Day, I urge you, take a moment to reflect on these injustices and to make sure they are never ever repeated in the future.
My name is Rhiannon Wright and I'm from the Burruburrungal people of the Darug Nation. My mother is Leanne Mulgo Watson and my grandmother is Darug Auntie Edna Watson. My family is very important, especially as an Aboriginal person, because they've made me who I am today. They've taught me about my language, my culture. All of our stories and knowledge gets passed on, and we have, through my family, a connection to country and where we belong. The stolen generations, the generations of the children who were forcibly removed from their families, their parents, their community by the government. The removing the stolen generations on country, it not only affected the people or the children who were removed and their families and the community, but it also has an effect on country. Aboriginal people are a part of country. We believe that we belong to it, we're a part of it. So to remove our people from country, it has a huge impact, because those people are the ones that we have a responsibility to our country to look after it, to care for it. And when those people aren't there, then country loses itself as well, because it doesn't have the people there to care for it. And taking people from country, when they are such a huge part of that country, they lose their identity and their sense of self and their connection to who they are and where they're from. And there wasn't actually anyone removed, as in like my mother or my grandmother, but I grew up hearing stories from my grandmother about when the men in the black cars, she would always say, would come to their house to inspect their house and to check on them. And she grew up in fear, having to go and hide with her brothers and sisters. And her mother brought up her children in a very, I wouldn't say strict, but a way that she was always worried that they would have a reason to be taken from her. So she always would try and keep her house as clean as possible, the children neat and tidy. In our family in particular, even though no one was actually removed, we had a huge loss of knowledge and culture because of the fear at the time. If you were caught speaking your language or practicing your culture, then that was a reason to take children away. So when my grandmother was growing up, her mother, my great-grandmother, she was fluent in the Darug language, but when any of the children came into the room, if she happened to be speaking the language, they would stop straight away. So the language skipped a generation in our family, so we kind of lost that knowledge from the fear of having the kids removed. I think it's important to remember and commemorate Sorry Day because it's not something that just happened in the past, it's something that still affects people today. And a lot of people in Australia don't actually know the history about the stolen generations. They don't think that it might have happened where they're from or that it affects anyone today. They kind of think that it's something that happened in the past, but it's something that in our family, it was my mother's generation, my grandmother's generation that was affected by this, and it's a knock-on effect. It still affects people today. It carries on. Trauma travels through family lines, and it's something that still affects people today. And I think it's important for people to reflect and remember and acknowledge it, because it's something that we need as a country to learn from and to have truth-telling to move forward. Everyone else would have different experiences, different stories to tell, and I feel like nearly all Aboriginal people in Australia would have some kind of story to tell about the stolen generations, because it didn't happen in just one little area, it happened everywhere and it affected everyone. But this is just our little story.